a truck driver horror story. It was a moonless night when Jake, a seasoned truck driver, embarked on a journey that he would never forget. The stretch of highway he was about to travel was notorious among truckers for its eerie tales and unexplained phenomena. They called it the Haunting Highway. Jake had been driving trucks for over a decade, and he prided himself on his ability to handle any road. But as he drove towards the Haunting Highway, a chill ran down his spine, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. Chapter 1. The start of the journey. Jake was hauling a load of electronics from Seattle to Denver. His truck, a massive 18-wheeler named Iron Lady, had never failed him before. As he adjusted his cap and checked his GPS, he noticed that his route took him directly through the Haunting Highway. He shrugged it off, attributing the tales to superstitious truckers. Nothing to be scared of, Jake muttered to himself as he turned onto the highway. The road was dark and deserted, with only the occasional flicker of his headlights illuminating the path ahead. Chapter 2. An hour into the drive, Jake felt a sudden drop in temperature. He glanced at the dashboard. The temperature had plummeted from a mild 60 degrees to a freezing 30 degrees. He cranked up the heater, but it made no difference. The cold seemed to seep into his bones. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something, a figure standing by the side of the road. It was a woman dressed in white, her hair flowing in the wind. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He slowed down, intending to offer her help, but as his headlights swept over the spot, she vanished. Jake shook his head. Just my imagination, he thought, but his hands trembled on the steering wheel. Chapter 3. The mysterious radio. To distract himself, Jake turned on the radio. Static. He twisted the dial, searching for a station. Suddenly, a voice broke through the static. It was a soft, melodic voice singing an old lullaby. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." Jake frowned. The song was hauntingly familiar. His mother used to sing it to him when he was a child. But how could it be playing on the radio in the middle of nowhere? As the song continued, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of dread. He tried to change the station, but the radio wouldn't budge. The lullaby played on, and Jake felt as if he were being drawn into a dark memory he had long forgotten. Chapter 4. The Phantom Truck. The lullaby finally faded into static, and Jake turned the radio off, his heart pounding. He took a deep breath and focused on the road. The Haunting Highway stretched endlessly before him, shrouded in darkness. Suddenly, he saw headlights in his rearview mirror. Another truck was approaching fast. Relieved to see another vehicle, Jake slowed down to let it pass. But as the truck drew closer, Jake's relief turned to terror. The truck was old and battered, its headlights glowing an unnatural red. The phantom truck pulled up alongside Jake, and he caught a glimpse of the driver. It was a skeletal figure, its eyes hollow and glowing red like the headlights. The ghostly driver turned its head and locked eyes with Jake, a sinister grin spreading across its bony face. Jake floored the accelerator, but the phantom truck matched his speed effortlessly. It stayed beside him for what felt like an eternity before suddenly veering off the road and disappearing into the darkness. Chapter 5. The Haunted Rest. Shaken, Jake decided he needed a break. He spotted a rest stop up ahead and pulled in. The place was deserted, with only a few dim lights flickering in the darkness. Jake parked the Iron Lady and stepped out, his breath visible in the freezing air. As he walked towards the rest stop building, he noticed a figure sitting on a bench. It was the woman in white. She looked up at him with sad, hollow eyes. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake's instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't leave her there. He approached cautiously. "What's wrong?" he asked. "They took my baby," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Please, you have to help me find her." Jake's heart ached for the woman, but he didn't know how to help. "Who took your baby?" he asked gently. Before she could answer, a chilling wind swept through the rest stop and the woman vanished, leaving only an eerie silence. Chapter C. The Abandoned Gas Station. Feeling unnerved, Jake decided to continue his journey. He needed to get off this highway as soon as possible. As he drove on, he saw a sign for a gas station up ahead. His fuel gauge was low, so he decided to stop. The gas station was old and dilapidated, with broken windows and rusted pumps. It looked like it hadn't been used in years. Jake pulled up to a pump and stepped out, hoping to find someone who could help him. But the door to the gas station creaked open and an old man stepped out. He looked ancient, his face lined with wrinkles and his eyes sunken. "Need some gas?" he asked, his voice raspy. "Yes, please," Jake replied, handing him some cash. As the old man pumped the gas, he looked up at Jake. "You shouldn't be on this road," he said. "Bad things happen here." Jake nodded. "I've heard the stories, but I have to get to Denver." The old man shook his head. "It's not just stories, son. This road is cursed. Many have lost their lives here." Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. "What do you mean?" The old man sighed. "This used to be a thriving town, but years ago, a tragedy struck. A woman and her baby were killed in a car accident right on this highway. Since then, strange things have been happening. People see her ghost, and those who do rarely make it out alive." Jake's blood ran cold. He thought of the woman in white in the phantom truck. "I saw her," he said quietly. The old man's eyes widened. "Then you need to leave now. Don't stop for anything. Just keep driving and don't look back." Jake thanked the old man and climbed back into the Iron Lady. He started the engine and sped away, his heart pounding in his chest. Chapter said, the highway seemed even darker now, and the air grew colder with each passing mile. Jake's mind raced with the old man's words. He had to get off this road as soon as possible. As he drove, he saw something in the distance, a figure standing in the middle of the road. It was the woman in white, holding a baby in her arms. Jake's heart leapt into his throat. He couldn't stop now, not after what the old man had told him. He swerved to avoid her, but as he passed, he heard a baby's cry. The sound was so piercing and sorrowful that it sent chills down his spine. He glanced in his rearview mirror and saw the woman standing there, her eyes filled with despair. Jake pushed the accelerator harder, desperate to escape the haunted highway. The road seemed to stretch on forever, and he began to wonder if he would ever reach the end. Chapter 8. Just when Jake thought he couldn't take it anymore, he saw a sign up ahead. "Welcome to Denver." Relief flooded through him as he drove past the sign and onto a brightly lit road. He pulled over and took a deep breath, his hands shaking. He had made it. He was off the haunting highway. As he sat there, catching his breath, he heard a soft voice. "Thank you." Jake looked around, but there was no one there. He realized it was the woman in white. Somehow, he had helped her find peace. He smiled to himself, knowing that he had survived the haunting highway. But he also knew that he would never forget the horror he had experienced on that dark, eerie road. Chapter 9. A new beginning? Jake arrived in Denver safely and delivered his cargo. The city was bustling with life, a stark contrast to the desolate highway he had just left behind. He found a motel to stay in for the night, eager for a good night's rest after his harrowing journey. As he lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman in white and the old man's warning. The haunting highway had changed him, made him more cautious and aware of the unseen forces that lurked in the shadows. He decided to take a break from trucking for a while and spend some time with his family. He called his wife, Sarah, and told her about his decision. She was relieved and happy to have him back home. Chapter 2. A visit to the past. A few weeks later, Jake decided to visit the old man's gas station. He wanted to thank him for his advice and learn more about the haunted highway. He drove back to the small town and found the gas station exactly as he remembered it. The old man was there, sitting on a bench outside the station. He looked up and smiled when he saw Jake. "I knew you'd come back," he said. Jake smiled back. "I wanted to thank you for your help. You saved my life." The old man nodded. "I'm glad you made it out. Not many do." Jake sat down beside him. "Can you tell me more about the woman in white?" The old man sighed. Her name was Emily. She was driving with her baby when a truck lost control and crashed into them. Both of them died instantly. Since then, her spirit has been searching for her baby on that highway. Jake felt a pang of sadness. "I saw her, and I heard her baby cry." The old man nodded. "You helped her find peace." She was grateful. Jake looked at the old man, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for everything." The old man smiled. "Take care of yourself, son. And remember, not all roads are meant to be traveled." Chapter 11. Jake returned home and spent time with his family, cherishing every moment. He knew that life was precious and that he had been given a second chance. He decided to start his own business, opening a small trucking company that focused on local deliveries. He shared his story with other truckers, warning them about the haunting highway. Some believed him, while others dismissed it as just another ghost story. But Jake knew the truth. Years passed, and Jake's business flourished. He never forgot the lessons he had learned on that dark, eerie road. He made sure to take precautions and always listen to his instinct. Chapter 12. One day, Jake's son Tim came to him with a request. "Dad, I want to be a truck driver like you." Jake looked at his son, feeling a mix of pride and concern. "It's a tough job, Tim. Are you sure?" Tim nodded. "I've heard your stories, and I know it's not easy, but I want to do it." Jake smiled and hugged his son. "All right, but promise me one thing. If you ever come across the haunting highway, turn back. Don't travel that road." Tim looked into his father's eyes and nodded. "I promise." Jake watched as his son embarked on his own journey, knowing that he had passed on not just the skills of a truck driver, but also the wisdom and caution needed to navigate the dark and dangerous roads of life. And so the legend of the haunting highway lived on, a chilling reminder of the unseen forces that lingered in the shadows. But Jake's story also served as a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his son.